And I'll officially welcome every single one of you to this session, this live session that's going to focus on managing stress or managing pressure positively. But before I start, it seems important to mention that this session is going to be recorded today so that people can view it afterwards, and people that haven't been able to make it, they can see it as well. So I just wanted to share that before we started. But I'm Angela Mappin, and I help people to build strategies that enable them to create and maintain healthy lives. And Skill-Based First Aid are a training provider for both physical and mental health first aid that believes in that equality between the two. And they're actually on a mission, and we work to fill the UK with heroes on standby. That's what we call them, that are trained in a way that empowers them to help someone in need, whether that's their physical health or their mental health. And, you know, we like to think that we train confidence and not just competence, so that people feel confident to help and support someone. And in terms of managing stress positively, I'm sure that, that every single one of you can, for most of the time, successfully manage pressure positively and stress positively. But how many of you could say that you've never been under any amount of stress or prolonged relentless activity that causes you stress? And although most of us can cope with short bursts of stress, and although it's technically not a medical condition, research does show that prolonged stress can lead to is linked to conditions such as anxiety, depression, and even burnout. But for this session today, and during the next 30 minutes, we're going to cover a few things. First of all, what stress is. You know, I guess we've all heard the word, we all feel it, we've all experienced it. And I'm going to take you through a structure called the 3R approach that will help you, once we finish this session, to think about how you might manage stress and pressure more positively in the future. But one other thing is I want to help you to recognize your stress and relaxation signature. So what's happening to you when you feel stressed? Where's your tension being stored? And also, what helps you find relief, which is your relaxation signature. So that's what I'm going to cover over the next 30 minutes. But we all want to feel like we're in control of everything, don't we? So it's important, or it seems important then, to take time to identify the pressures in our lives. And what's even more important is being able to do something about it once we've identified them. Because let's face it, you know, when we feel better, we work better. You know, and that's not just in an organizational perspective, that's in a personal perspective as well. But in a pressure situation, we can tend to put stress on ourselves, whether that's stress to get the job done, whether it's stress to get the job done right, on time, or even early. You know, we're always striving to do our best, aren't we? And that's either to please others or to please ourselves, to help us feel more comfortable. And basically, stress is actually our reaction to those pressures. And, you know, we live in a world of uncertainties, don't we? But one thing is certain, and that's that stress is here to stay and can't be ignored. And, you know, the world of work is ever changing, isn't it? You know, there might be an emphasis on competition, a pressure to achieve targets, pressure to meet deadlines, or even to keep up with the rapid advancements in technology. And a certain level of pressure and stress is desirable, even though you might not think it is. It is. We need a certain amount of pressure and a certain amount of stress, but because it helps to motivate us, it helps to boost our energy and our productivity. But when that pressure becomes too much to cope with, that positive force turns into negative and it becomes stress. And the Health and Safety Executive, the HSE, they define work-related stress as what you can see on the slide here. It's that adverse reaction that people have to excessive pressures or other types of demand that's placed on them at work. But what we can't forget is that people can also feel stressed when too few demands are placed on them. You know, when they're bored, when they're understimulated, when they're undervalued. So it's not just that there's too much, there could be too little. And when this happens, we can start to say things like, oh gosh, this is so stressful, or oh gosh, I'm so stressed. And when we say this, we might be talking about situations or events that put pressure on us. So for example, times when we've got lots to do, or when we've got lots to think about, but actually don't have much control over what happens. Or it might be our reaction to being placed under pressure. You know, those feelings, those real gut feelings that we get when we've got demands placed on us that we find difficult to cope with. And I just want to share with you some statements that some employees that have recovered from a stress-related illness shared with a group that they were part of. And they described these as the lies that we told ourselves. And these were relating to them denying the signs of stress, even when people pointed it out to them. And these included, well, I'm fine. You know, actually, it's you that's causing me stress. It's your nagging that's causing me stress. I love my job. Of course, I'm happy to take on more. Actually, I'm just feeling a bit tired. It's not me, it's everyone else, you know, and I'll be fine once this is done. If I can just have a break, I'll be all right. And most people in this group, they believed that these statements were true. And to a certain extent, some of them were, but the lie was actually them denying that the current situation was detrimental to their health and well-being, and that actually some changes were necessary. And this denial eventually led to something called burnout, which is a stress-related illness. So this is what people were saying in terms of the lies that they told themselves. And, you know, I can relate to some of those things on there, and I'm sure that you can too. But whether you oops, no, that's gone a little bit too far. Right, just a minute. Okay, right, here we are. But whether we recognize the warning signs of prolonged stress, or we're kind of going to that breaking point, if we try and push through that exhaustion and try to continue as we have been, it's only going to cause further emotional and physical damage to us. So now's the time just to take a pause, just take a pause and change direction by learning how we can help ourselves overcome our stresses and start to feel healthy and in control and positive again. And we can do this by looking at something called the 3R approach, which is about recognition. You know, can we recognize the warning signs of our stress? How do we know when we're stressed? What's happening to us? And how might we recognize that? Try and reverse what's happening. So try and undo what's happening by seeking out support from other people or resources or other things, and start to manage your stress in a way that feels really comfortable to you. And there's also that word resilience. And how might we actually build that resilience to the stress that we've got by taking care of not only our emotional health, but our physical health as well. So how might we build that resilience? So let's take the first of the R's then, which is that ability to recognize what's going on. And being able to identify our triggers and then start to address some of the causes of our stress is really useful and beneficial, because then we can find out where our stresses are coming from. And if we can figure out where they're coming from and what triggers them, then we've got more choices available to us. And feelings of stress, that they're normally triggered by things that's happening in our lives, which involve being under lots of pressure, facing some big changes, you know, being quite anxious or worried about something, or not having much or any control over the outcome of a situation. It might be around having responsibilities that you find overwhelming, or even times of uncertainty. You know, if the last 18 months and 2 years have told us anything, that, you know, times can be quite uncertain, and that can lead to more stresses being placed upon ourselves. And when we start to drill down even further, we can start to identify what are the underlying causes of the stress that we're experiencing. So to start to help you recognize the sources of your stress, I just want you all to imagine, just kind of imagine right now that you have a pressure pot. So we can use this as a metaphor. This is a pot, and what is going into that pot are all the stresses that you have going on in your life. And this pot keeps filling up, and actually it doesn't stop, because as I mentioned earlier, stress is here to stay. But the big thing, and there's a big but here, it can't be ignored. But sometimes, you know, that pot, as it continues to fill up, we have our own coping strategies, and we can actually cope with things that are going on. And it's a balance, really. It's a balance between having the good coping strategies and being able to recognize what is going into our pressure pot. But normal everyday pressures flow into it, and that's both positive and negative. But what happens is, you know, your pot, it continues to fill up, and it can become heavy, and it can start to become difficult to carry around with you. So just imagine that, you know, you can start to struggle to keep it at a level that feels comfortable to you, and you can start to feel overwhelmed. This is your stress, you know, and these feelings that you're getting because of this pot becoming quite full is actually your stress. And this is your reaction to the pressure of the pot and your fight or flight response being evoked, and lots of adrenaline and cortisol running around your body. But that's all well and good, isn't it? But how are we going to recognize this? So, you know, metaphorically, you've got this pressure pot. It can become heavy at times. But how do we actually recognize when our pressure pot is becoming quite full? Well, your emotions might be triggered in the way that you feel. So you might become quite irritable. You might become quite impatient. You might have that real sense of dread, or become worried about something. You might be unable to enjoy things, or become overburdened. So there are lots of feelings that you might have when your pressure pot is starting to become quite full. Your actions and your behaviors might present themselves in the following way. You might be constantly worrying about something. You might be snapping at people. You might be biting your nails or unable to concentrate. It might present itself in being tearful or crying, or be quite restless, just like you can't sit still, or even avoiding situations that are troubling you. You know, these are just some things that might be happening to you to help you recognize when your pressure pot is full. And even physically, you know, you might be affected physically. You might have shallow breathing or hyperventilating. You might have some muscle tension. You might feel tired all the time, get frequent headaches, high blood pressure, sometimes feeling dizzy or feeling sick. But I want you to think about your own pressure pot, and I want you to start to identify what's happening to you when you're feeling stressed. And I want you to think about how tuned in are you with what you're feeling. And just take a moment just to scan your body right now and try and notice where you're storing any tension. You know, is it in your shoulders? Is it in your neck? Is it in your head? Where are you storing that tension? And as a takeaway after this session, try and list what stress looks like for you so that you can start to identify it earlier, and then start to take steps to prevent a downward spiral, because this is your stress signature. You know, being able to identify that. So for me, for example, I know that my pressure pot is getting quite full when I start having frequent headaches, when my sleep becomes disturbed, when I become a little bit irritable and quite tearful and quite emotional. And I know that this is a sign that that I need to do something about it. I need to start to take some action. So think about what your stress signature might be. So now we need to start looking at, you know, once we've recognized our stress signature, once we can recognize that actually, you know, every single one of us only has so much that we can cope with, we need to start looking at the choices that might be good for us. And well, there's a couple of ways to do that really. And one is to seek that support and think about who's in your support network, and then start to manage that stress. But everyone is different. You know, there's not a one size fits all here. But think about, you know, who's in your support network. It could be any one of these people on here. It could be other people. You know, it could be family. It could be friends that you trust. It could be mental health first aiders that you might have within your organisation, or employee assistance programs, even your line managers. Think about who is in your support network, but please don't forget about you, because you are your support network as well. You are in your support network, which means that, you know, you can make choices as well about what happens to you. And, you know, your network are invaluable to help you in ways that maybe you haven't thought about. And they can help you keep that pressure pot at a level that you can cope with. And they can help by listening without judgment, just listening to what you're saying. You know, empower you to find the right solution for yourself, maybe signpost to appropriate resources, and focus on preventative measures or your recovery. And be there in your time of need. So everyone in your support network can absolutely help when that pressure or that stress becomes a little bit difficult to cope with. So thinking about, you know, what is the right course of action? You know, when you can't control what's happening, you know, challenge yourself to control the way that you respond to what's happening, because this is where your strength is, you know, and this is where your power lies, to think about the way that you respond. But we can only respond if we can recognize what's happening in the first place, can't we? So think about your power. Think about the gift that you have in terms of you having control over how you respond, because everyone has that strength within them. So what is the right course of action then? How do we alleviate some of the pressures from our pressure pot and that stress? Well, it's about reversing what is happening as well, and thinking about, well, what helps you relax? You know, how do you find relief from the stresses that you have on a daily basis? You know, there's just a few examples on there. Do you take a walk? Do you read a book? Do you cook? Do you bake? Is it a smell that you like? You know, what is it that brings those lovely relaxing sensations to your body? Because this is your relaxation signature. So as well as being able to identify your stress signature, I want you all to start thinking about what your relaxation signature is. And I work with lots of people, helping them to identify their own coping strategies. And this is what we talk about. We talk about, you know, what helps you find relief from everything that's going on, and how might we build more of that into our lives? Or how might we, when we recognize that our pot is becoming too heavy and too full, and how might we use this to actually find a bit of relief from what's going on? So let's move on to the final R, which is all around resilience. And we can all start to build strategies to allow us to cope with the everyday ups and downs by building our resilience, building on what we've already got. You know, it's not about making your pressure pot bigger. That's not what this is about. This is about being able to identify when it's getting full and then taking action to be able to help it keep at a level that's comfortable for you. And resilience, you know, it's not just about your ability to bounce back, is it? It's also that mental reservoir of strength that we all have within us that we can call on in our time of need. You know, and it's not just the absence of difficulty either. It's that ability to be able to adapt and grow. And it's not a personality trait. You know, it's not something that we've either got or we haven't. It's something that we can all take steps to achieve, if we can just recognize what's going on for us and then look at how we might reverse that. And some examples of how you might do this, and these are just examples really, you know, making some lifestyle changes, whatever those lifestyle changes are, looking after your physical health, looking after your mental health, being able to recognize your stress signature and connecting with your relaxation signature, and actually giving yourself permission to take time to really think about the above, because sometimes we don't allow ourselves and we don't give ourselves that permission to be able to do that. You know, when you change the way that you look at things, the things that you look at change. So some examples here might be around, you know, just focus on your daily accomplishments. What have you achieved today that's very positive? What have you achieved that you would feel proud of? Avoid criticizing yourself. You know, write daily in a gratitude journal if that's what helps you. You know, just something that's going to help you refocus your mind. You know, post a list of what's valued, what's important to you, and pin it somewhere where you can see it. You know, and actually nurture that time when you've got time to be mindful, or just have some quiet time, because when you change the way that you look at things, the things that you look at change. And start to change how you think about and do work as well. You know, and that might be about, and just some examples might be around, you know, just not multitasking as much, just focus on one thing at a time. Start to work at a reasonable and steady pace rather than rushing around all the time. Start to break down big jobs into smaller jobs, smaller achievable parts. Don't forget about recognizing and celebrating your achievements. And just think about who's in your support networks as well. But, you know, we can also increase our resilience by improving our relationships. And that could be around, you know, setting boundaries for ourselves in terms of what we can do and what we can't do, and actually being okay with pushing back sometimes. Avoiding toxic people and situations, you know, not being part of those situations can help. And learn to be comfortable with saying, well, actually, I'm not sure about that, but I might find out. So improve those communications and those relationships that you have with people. And you may or may not have seen this about resilience, the 5 ways to well-being. And again, lots of research was done to look at what are the main ways that people find relief from all of the stressors and all of the pressure that's going on. And these are the 5 that that came out on top, and the 5 that took lots of research as well. And it's about connection, because lots of evidence shows that feeling close and valued by others is a basic human need. So how might we have that connection, not only with ourselves, but with others as well? Being active, whatever active means for you. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean putting on a pair of trainers, getting out the door and going for a 5-mile run. It can be anything, you know, anything that just improves our mobility and fitness, and start to build that in. Start to take notice and be curious of things that are around you and surrounding you, and start to catch sight of those lovely things that we might not have seen before, or smelt before, or tasted before. You know, we've just moved into a new season, haven't we? We've moved from summer into autumn, and notice what's happening with everything in the environment, the trees turning colour, the weather. There's lots of things that we can take notice of, being more mindful of things. You know, giving something, and that could be around just doing an act of kindness regularly, volunteering, you know, just giving something back to someone else. It might just be saying well done to someone, because again, lots of evidence and researchers suggesting that, you know, doing an act of kindness regularly is associated with an increase in well-being. And keeping learning as well. You know, you've all joined me here today for half an hour, so you know, I know how important learning is for you, and just increasing your insights and education on certain topics. But it could be anything. It could be trying out a new recipe, or playing an instrument, or whatever. But even with all of these things, you know, good mental well-being doesn't mean that you're never going to experience difficult situations again, but it might mean that actually you have more choices available to you. You might just be able to open that tap on your pressure pot and just let some of the stressors out. And you'll know how to do that, because you'll be able to recognize when things get a little bit tough. You know, you might want to check in on your mental health, just asking yourself questions like, you know, how do you feel today, both mentally and physically? How did you sleep last night? Are you having any unhelpful thoughts? You know, how full is your pressure pot? And are you connecting with your relaxation signature? Are you trying to figure out what your relaxation signature is? You know, so just asking yourself these questions every day can be a real help. But detecting early, you know, and then taking action, I think is a key point that I want you to go away with. And just some ideas that are on the slide now about identifying your stress signature. You know, how can you recognize when your pressure pot is starting to not only become heavy, but become quite full as well? And how can you connect more with your relaxation signature, as we've just said? If you're feeling overwhelmed, you know, use your support network. Think about the way you do with work, you know, with work. Think about how you do things at work. You might want to delegate some tasks, discuss different priorities. Connect with people who care about you. And, you know, think about the people in your support network. But talking is a great thing. You know, verbalizing your feelings and talking it through with someone actually is, again, a gift that you all have. It's about learning how to be comfortable with that and sharing that with the people that you trust and the people that you know will listen without judgment, but not keeping it all to yourself. But you can manage stress and pressure positively. And even though it can feel out of control sometimes and insurmountable, it's actually a sign that something needs to be fixed. It's not a lifetime sentence. It's something that we can have control of. It's something that we can do something about. If we can recognize, we can reverse, and we can build our resilience. And just before I let you all get on with the rest of your Wednesday, I just want you to think about bouncing back. And, you know, this slide, I think, sums up very nicely some of the things that you can think about or be more mindful of when you're in a stressful or a pressured environment, or you're feeling quite stressed, and really think about how you might want to take control. When I've shared this with people in the past, some people have really took it and put it somewhere where they can see it every day, just to remind themselves of the positive. And of the positive things that that they can do. And don't forget, you know, this this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to see all the slides if you wanted to watch them back. So you'll see that particular slide again, should you want to. But I can't believe that's half an hour gone already, hasn't it? You know, the time just flies, and you know, I'm hoping that's offered a little bit of food for thought. You know, I'm hoping that it's helped you to just think about things in a different way. And I hope that you've taken away some useful ideas and practical steps to managing your own stress and pressure in a positive way. And as I mentioned, you know, we've recorded the session, so keep an eye on your inbox for both a copy of the recording and a toolkit that we've put together that covers everything and a little bit more about what we've talked about today. And it includes some self-care and general well-being tips too. For those of you that know about skill-based first aid, you know, you'll already know that we provide a number of mental health training courses. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more, then please feel free just to get in touch. Or book a free consultation with your workplace needs, because we're always happy to have a chat. One other point before I let you get on, if you do have any questions, then please just email them to us and we'll try and get, well, not try, we will get back to you with some answers, because half an hour is not a long time, is it? So I'm going to stop the recording now.